In the bustling city of Westridge, where noise filled every corner and ambition hung in the air like electricity, lived two climbers with the same dream: to reach the summit of Mount Everest, the ultimate testament to human perseverance and courage. The loud dreamer Marcus Webb was impossible to miss. At 32, he had built a reputation as the voice in mountaineering circles. His Instagram was filled with dramatic training videos, each captioned with bold promises about his upcoming Everest expedition. "This is what a future Everest conqueror looks like," he'd post alongside videos of his punishing gym routines, his face contorted with effort as motivational music pounded in the background. Pain is temporary, glory is forever. At every industry gathering, Marcus commanded attention like a force of nature. "When I plant my flag at the summit," he'd announce to anyone within earshot, his voice carrying across crowded rooms, "it'll be live-streamed to show the world what determination looks like. This climb isn't just for me, it's to inspire every person who's been told their dreams are too big." He debated climbing techniques with veterans, often interrupting their advice to explain his revolutionary approach. He challenged weather predictions, equipment recommendations, and training schedules from those who had climbed for decades. "They don't understand innovation," he'd tell his followers after these encounters, filming himself in dramatic close-up. "They're stuck in old ways of thinking. The next generation, our generation, will rewrite the rules of what's possible." Marcus spent hours defending his methods online, arguing with commenters who questioned his readiness, explaining himself to skeptics, seeking validation from fellow climbers. Each debate left him drained, yet he couldn't stop engaging. "They need to understand," he told his climbing partner during a rare moment when his phone was down. "I can't let these doubters go unchallenged. What kind of example would I be setting if I let negativity win? Champions fight back." For Marcus, the journey wasn't just about climbing, it was about being seen climbing, about proving to the world that he was extraordinary. Every workout was content, every struggle was narrative, every setback was character development in his ongoing story of triumph. The silent climber. Then there was Elena Chen. At 34, she had been preparing for Everest for 7 years with the patience of flowing water gradually reshaping stone. Few outside her immediate circle knew of her plans, not because she was secretive, but because she saw no need to broadcast what was, at its heart, a deeply personal journey. While Marcus posted daily updates, Elena trained in solitude, finding peace in the rhythm of her breath and the burn in her muscles. While he announced each milestone with fanfare, she quietly logged her accomplishments in a worn journal, tracking her progress with the precision of a scientist and the reflection of a philosopher. While he defended his methods to critics, she absorbed feedback from seasoned climbers, filtering what served her and discarding what didn't. Like a river that carries some things forward and lets others settle to the bottom. "Aren't you worried people will steal your techniques?" a fellow climber once asked her as they descended from a training climb in the Cascades. Elena smiled, her eyes reflecting the vast landscape around them. "The mountain doesn't care who knows what. It only cares what you can do when you're on it. Knowledge freely shared lifts us all higher." When she encountered skepticism, she rarely engaged. Once, at a climbing convention, a group of men questioned whether her slight frame could handle Everest's challenges. Instead of arguing, Elena simply nodded and walked away, conserving her energy for battles worth fighting. The next day, she added an extra hour to her training, focusing on the specific concerns they'd raised, not to prove them wrong but to ensure she was truly ready for the challenge that awaited her. "Why didn't you set them straight?" her friend asked, indignant on her behalf. "You've summited peaks they've only dreamed of." "Because arguing wouldn't make me stronger," Elena replied, securing her harness for another climb. "But training will, and ultimately, the mountain is the only judge that matters." In quieter moments, Elena would sometimes reflect on the nature of her journey. "I'm not climbing despite my fears," she wrote in her journal one night. "I'm climbing with them. They're not obstacles, they're guides showing me where I need to grow stronger." The preparation as departure day approached, Marcus's social media exploded with updates. He live-streamed his packing, held QA sessions about his strategy, and engaged in heated debates with armchair mountaineers questioning his readiness. "They say I can't, I say watch me," became his rallying cry, repeated in posts, interviews, and the custom merchandise he began selling to fund his journey. Each interaction left him slightly more exhausted, slightly more doubting. He'd lie awake at night rehearsing arguments, defending choices, worrying about perceptions. The mental drain began affecting his physical preparation. Dark circles formed under his eyes, his training times plateaued, then declined. "It's just pre-expedition nerves," he told himself. reaching for his phone to post another defiant message to silence the growing doubts within and without. Meanwhile, Elena methodically prepared in silence, like a master craftsman focused entirely on the work at hand. She studied weather patterns, memorized routes, and conditioned her body with the singular focus of a monk in meditation. She trained not just her muscles but her mind, practicing mindfulness techniques to stay present during the climb, to make decisions based on clarity rather than emotion. When doubt crept in, she sat with it, examining her fears without judgment, addressing weaknesses without shame. She transformed anxiety into action, turning every worry into a specific preparation. "Shouldn't you be promoting yourself more?" her sponsor asked during a rare meeting. "Build some excitement? Your story could inspire so many." "The mountain doesn't care about my follower count," Elena answered, her gaze steady. "I'd rather spend that energy training, if my journey inspires others later." "That's wonderful. But first, I need to focus on making sure there is a journey to share." In the final days before departure, while Marcus filmed emotional goodbye videos and held a lavish send-off party, Elena spent a quiet evening with her parents, sharing a home-cooked meal. "Are you afraid?" her mother asked softly as they cleared the dishes together. "Yes," Elena answered honestly, "but fear is just the shadow cast by a dream worth pursuing. It means I understand what I'm undertaking, and understanding is the beginning of respect for the mountain, for the journey, and for myself." The base camp. When they both arrived at Everest Base Camp, the contrast became even clearer. Marcus arrived with cameras rolling, his team capturing every moment of his grand entrance. "Day 1 at base camp," he shouted into his phone, his breath forming clouds in the thin, cold air. "The journey begins now. They said I couldn't make it this far, but here I am." He spent hours each evening updating his followers, responding to comments, defending his approach to those watching from home. Even as his body needed rest to acclimate to the altitude, his mind remained in constant battle mode, fighting invisible critics thousands of miles away. Elena settled into her tent quietly, speaking little but observing everything: how the veteran climbers moved, conserving energy, how they breathed efficiently in the thin air, how they paced themselves for the long journey ahead. She noticed which guides the experienced climbers trusted, which weather signs they heeded, which routines they maintained. When a famous climber offered a critique of her equipment, Marcus jumped in from nearby. "Actually, that's outdated thinking. New climbers like us have better methods. The traditional approach is holding the sport back." The exchange devolved into an argument that left both men frustrated and others in camp uncomfortable. Energy that should have been preserved was squandered. Bonds that could have formed were strained. When the same climber approached Elena with advice, she listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and thanked him. Later, she quietly adjusted her gear based on what made sense for her journey, integrating new wisdom with her own experience. "You don't need to take everyone's advice," Marcus told her, frustrated after watching this exchange. "Half these so-called experts haven't summited in years. Don't let them get in your head." "I don't," Elena replied simply, "but I need to hear it first to know what's worth taking." Wisdom can come from unexpected sources if we're humble enough to listen. That night, as temperatures dropped and winds howled outside their tents, Elena wrote in her journal, "The mountain teaches before you even begin to climb it. It shows you who you really are, not who you pretend to be for others. Here, stripped of pretense and comfort, your true self emerges. The question is whether you'll recognize and accept what you see." The ascent. As they began their ascent, the mountain revealed its true nature, indifferent to reputation, followers, or promises. It demanded only presence, preparation, and respect. It did not care about intentions or dreams, only actions and decisions. At 21,000 feet, a storm forced climbers to shelter for 3 days. Marcus paced his tent, frustrated, arguing with guides about pushing forward, streaming complaints to followers when cell service allowed. "This delay is killing our momentum," he vented online. "Sometimes you have to defy the odds and push through obstacles. That's what separates champions from the rest." But privately, anxiety gnawed at him. What if he failed after all this public buildup? What if the narrative he'd constructed came crashing down? The thought was almost as terrifying as the mountain itself. Elena used the downtime differently, not as an obstacle but as an opportunity. She rested deeply, conserving precious energy. She visualized the path ahead in meticulous detail, mentally rehearsing challenging sections. She strengthened bonds with Sherpa guides through quiet, respectful conversations, learning from their generations of wisdom. "The mountain is teaching patience," one guide told her as they shared tea. "Those who fight its lessons rarely reach the top." Elena nodded. "In my language, We have a saying, the water that rushes fastest over rocks is also the first to become mist and disappear. When the storm cleared and climbing resumed, the difference in their approaches became increasingly apparent. Marcus pushed hard, trying to make up for lost time, broadcasting his progress with triumphant updates whenever possible. The performance added an extra burden to an already impossible task. When they reached 26,000 feet, the death zone where oxygen is too scarce to sustain human life, Marcus's energy reserves were depleted not just from the climb but from the constant performance, the endless explaining, the emotional labor of managing perceptions. His body was on the mountain, but his mind was still fighting battles in the virtual world below. Elena, having preserved her mental and physical resources, moved steadily upward, each step purposeful, her mind clear despite the oxygen deprivation. She had prepared for this moment not just physically but psychologically, ready to face the void not with bravado but with humble determination. Up here, she thought as she navigated a treacherous section, her crampons biting into blue ice. There are no followers, no critics, no audience. There is only this moment, this breath, this step, and in this simplicity, there is profound freedom. The summit decision just 1,000 feet from the summit. Their guide called for a critical decision. Weather was worsening. They had a narrow window to summit and return safely. The real test of a climber is not just reaching the top but surviving the descent, when exhaustion makes every step treacherous. Marcus, desperate to prove his critics wrong, pushed to continue despite signs of altitude sickness clouding his judgment. His lips had turned slightly blue, his coordination was faltering, but his determination burned fiercely. I didn't come this far to turn back, he insisted, his voice raspy with fatigue and determination. Everyone is watching. I have to show them. This is my one shot to prove what I'm made of. Elena observed the darkening sky, felt the mountain's warning in the strengthening wind, and made her choice. It was perhaps the hardest decision of her life, to be so close yet recognize when ambition must yield to wisdom. I'm turning back, she told the guide quietly. The words hurt to say, but there was peace in their truth. But we're so close, Marcus argued, incredulous. After all this work, all this build-up, you're just giving up? What will people think? Elena looked at him calmly, seeing not an opponent but a fellow dreamer caught in a web partly of his own making. I'm not climbing for anyone else, she said. The mountain will be here next season. I need to be alive to climb it. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't to continue, it's to know when to turn around. As she began her descent, Elena carried with her not failure but a profound lesson, that true courage sometimes means disappointing others to honor your deeper wisdom, that some summits aren't meant to be reached on the first attempt, that life's greatest achievements often come not from forcing your will upon the world, but from dancing with reality as it presents itself. The true summit. Marcus pushed on but was forced to turn back just 500 feet from the summit as his oxygen levels dropped dangerously and his guide refused to continue. The descent became a desperate struggle, requiring emergency assistance that put others at risk. When he finally returned to base camp, defeated and ill, there were no cameras rolling, no triumphant posts. The silence he'd avoided for so long finally engulfed him, and in that silence, clarity began to emerge. I was climbing for all the wrong reasons, he realized as medical staff attended to him. I wanted the achievement more than the experience. I wanted to be seen summiting more than I wanted to actually summit. Elena, having descended safely ahead of the worst weather, rested in her tent at base camp. No announcements, no explanations, no need to justify her decision. She sat with her disappointment but also with her wisdom. She had listened to the mountain instead of her ego. When she stepped outside her tent that evening, she found the veteran climber whose advice she'd taken sitting nearby, watching the fading light paint Everest's peak in gold. You made the right call up there, he said without preamble. That's why you'll make it to the top one day. How can you be sure? She asked, sitting beside him. Because you respect the silence, he replied. The mountain speaks in silence, in the absence of wind before a storm, in the stillness before an avalanche. Only those who know how to listen can hear it. Only those who can silence their own noise can hear what matters. He looked at her with eyes that had seen too many fail to return. The summit is not just a physical place, it's a state of being, of complete presence, of harmony with your surroundings. Some reach the physical summit but never experience the true peak. Others, like you today, find the real summit even in turning back. The transformation. 6 months later, Elena returned to Everest. This time, with better weather and deeper wisdom, she reached the summit. There were no cameras, no live streams, just Elena, the mountain, and the profound silence at the top of the world. Standing there, with the curved horizon stretching beneath her and prayer flags snapping in the wind, She felt not triumph or vindication but profound gratitude. Gratitude for the strength to endure, for the wisdom to turn back, for the courage to return, for the mountain's harsh but honest teachings. When she returned home, someone asked what she felt standing at the summit. Peace, she said simply. The kind you can only find when you stop trying to be heard and start listening. When you realize that proving yourself to others is a prison, but proving yourself to yourself is freedom. Back home, Marcus watched Elena's quiet return. No press conferences, no viral posts, just a small, private celebration with those who had supported her journey. Something shifted in him as he recovered from his failed attempt. The experience had stripped away layers of ego and performance, revealing a deeper purpose beneath. He deleted his social media accounts, declined interview requests, and began training differently, methodically, quietly, with purpose instead of performance. I thought failure would destroy me, he wrote in a private journal, adopting Elena's practice. Instead, it rebuilt me. I confused attention with achievement, volume with value. Now I understand, the noise was drowning out my own inner voice, the one I needed most. The meeting of minds a year later. They crossed paths at a climbing center. The change in Marcus was evident not in what he said, but in what he didn't. The need to dominate conversation, to be seen and heard and validated, had been replaced by something rarer, the confidence to listen. I understand now, he told Elena as they prepared for a training climb. What I missed up there. And what was that? She asked. That the noise wasn't just around me, it was inside me. I couldn't hear what mattered because I was too busy talking. I was so afraid of silence because I thought it meant insignificance. Now I realize it's where all significance begins. Elena nodded. The most important conversations happen in the spaces between words. The most powerful journeys happen when we stop performing and start experiencing. I'm going back next year, he said, not to prove anything to anyone, just to climb, just to be there, fully present, with whatever the mountain offers. The mountain will be waiting, Elena replied, and this time, it might actually hear you. The true power in the end. Both reached their summits, Elena atop Everest, and Marcus in the conquest of his own noise. Both discovered the same truth, that power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue its worth or defend its decisions. True power moves in silence. It listens before it speaks. It acts without explanation. It knows that not every thought needs expression. Not every critic deserves a response. And not every journey needs an audience. The loudest voice in the room may command attention, but it's the quiet presence that commands respect. In a world that glorifies noise, silence remains the ultimate power, not as an absence, but as a presence strong enough to need no proof beyond itself. Marcus eventually did return to Everest, without fanfare, without updates, without the burden of performing while pursuing, and in that sacred silence, with each focused step toward the summit, he discovered a profound truth, that the greatest achievements aren't the ones that silence critics or generate applause, they're the ones that align with your deepest values and connect you to something greater than yourself. And when he finally stood at the summit 2 years after his failed attempt, there was no one to witness it but the sky above and the world below. No validation but the beating of his own heart. No proof but the journey itself. It was more than enough. Remember, your mountain awaits. Climb it for the right reasons. The world is loud. Find your power in silence. Not every thought needs expression. Not every critic deserves a response. True strength isn't in making yourself heard, but in knowing when to listen. Your most important audience is yourself. The noblest victories are often the ones no one else sees. Wisdom knows that sometimes turning back is the greatest courage. Achievement without presence is an empty summit. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30 verse 15.